right, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into air warfare during World War II. Now, this isn't just, planes and bombs, though obviously they're a huge part of it.
Sure.
We're going to explore how the skies became this absolutely critical battleground.
Yeah.
How it influenced, everything. Grand strategy, political ideas, even just daily life for people.
It really did permeate everything.
Air power was, a massive component in all theaters, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Eating up just a huge chunk of industrial output for everyone involved.
Oh, absolutely. And what's really fascinating here is just that complexity you mentioned. To understand the air war, you pretty much have to understand the whole conflict.
Yeah.
So our goal today is really to pull out the key nuggets, the important takeaways and maybe some surprising bits from the sources you've gathered.
Help people get a solid grasp quickly.
Exactly. Because the way air power evolved, it just forced nations to completely rethink, everything. How they fought, how they organized their industries, society.
It's wild to think about now, given how central air power is. But back then, how did nations even start thinking about it? What were the core ideas shaping their air forces, especially between the Axis and Allies?
Well, it's a really stark contrast when you look at it.
Okay.
You had Germany and Japan, the Axis powers, right? They designed their air forces to work really closely with their armies and navies.
Federated support.
Exactly. They kind of downplayed strategic bombing initially, didn't see it as the main thing, and that meant they were, frankly, quite late in figuring out how to defend against it.
Interesting. And the Allies.
So Britain and the U.S., they went in a different direction. They really emphasized strategic bombing and tactical air control right from the get-go. So they ended up building much, much larger strategic forces. Those long-range bombers we always picture, designed to hit deep.
Right. And speaking of Germany, how did they even build an air force? Wasn't that banned after World War I by the Treaty of Versailles?
It was. That's a great point and a really sneaky part of the story.
Sneaky how?
Well, after Versailles in 1919, Germany secretly trained air crews. They used civilian flying clubs, sport flying.
Clever.
Even more, they actually had a secret fighter pilot school in the Soviet Union, believe it or not, at Lipetsk, starting way back in 1926.
Wow, in the Soviet Union.
Yep. So by the time the Luftwaffe was officially announced in 1935, its core thinking, its doctrine was already set.
Which was?
Gain air superiority, locally, just for a time maybe, and provide direct support to the army on the battlefield. Strategic bombing, that was seen as more of a longer-term thing. Secondary.
Okay, so these different ideas, they inevitably clashed. The Battle of Britain seems like the first really big test.
Absolutely. A crucible, as you said.
What made the difference there for the RAF? They seemed outnumbered initially. I remember reading something about German pilots calling RAF formations Idiotenreihen.
That's right. Idiotenreihen. Rows of idiots. Gives you a sense of the German frustration, doesn't it?
It does.
See, the RAF had expanded incredibly fast, like from just 42 squadrons and 800 planes in 34 to 157 squadrons and nearly 3,700 planes by 39.
Huge jump.
Massive. But their real ace was how they used technology. They had this newly developed radar.
Right, the radar network.
And they brilliantly combined it with communication centers to vector their fighters, to direct them right onto the incoming German bombers with amazing precision.
So tech and organization.
Yeah.
But wasn't there a key decision by Hitler that really swung it?
A catastrophic one, a huge mistake. Hitler diverted the Luftwaffe from hitting RAF airfields and those vital radar stations to bombing London instead, the Blitz.
Why was that such a mistake strategically?
Well, bombing London hurt civilians terribly, obviously, but it didn't stop British aircraft production. Actually, production increased. Meanwhile, the Luftwaffe was taking heavy losses. They lost something like 1,400 planes shot down out of over 2,000 written off. The British lost similar numbers, but crucially, they recovered more pilots and could repair more planes.
So it let the RAF off the hook your way.
Exactly. It was Germany's first major defeat. And maybe even more importantly, it really changed minds in America. Convinced Roosevelt the UK could actually hold out and deserved full support, a real turning point.
Okay, let's shift focus. Across the world, in the Pacific Midway, another massive air-naval clash. How did the U.S. pull that off? Weren't they outnumbered there too?
They were initially, but the Americans had a massive advantage. Intelligence.
Code breaking.
Precisely. A cryptographic breakthrough gave them key details about the Japanese plan. It let them set an ambush for the Japanese carriers.
Wow. And the Japanese side?
They made some significant tactical errors. They split their fleet up, separated their battleships from their carriers. Just bad coordination.
So the U.S. caught them unprepared.
Pretty much. Japan lost 3 of its 4 main carriers really early in the battle. It came down to some, honestly, lucky timing for the American dive bombers. They arrived just as the Japanese planes were refueling and rearming after earlier attacks had kept them busy.
Talk about timing and the long-term effect of Midway. How did that change the Pacific War?
Fundamentally, it just completely shifted the balance of naval power. After Midway, Japan couldn't really launch major offensives anymore.
So the U.S. went on the attack.
Exactly. And it deeply affected U.S. commanders. Think about MacArthur. He'd been hammered in the Philippines, largely because Japan owned the skies there.
Right.
He swore never again. His whole island-hopping strategy after that was built around the range of his bombers, the 5th Air Force. Capture an island, immediately build an airfield, control the air. Midway taught them that lesson the hard way first, then decisively.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. The technology, the pace of innovation during the war seems just breathtaking.
It really was. Constant development.
What were some of the biggest leaps in air warfare tech? And who was really pushing the boundaries? Were they laying groundwork for, future conflicts?
The pace was incredible. And actually, both sides were pioneering what we'd now call PGM's precision-guided munitions.
Really? Back then?
Oh yeah, the Luftwaffe was actually first. September 43, they used the Fritz X, an armor-piercing glide bomb, to sink the Italian battleship Roma right after Italy switched sides.
Wow. A guided bomb sank a battleship.
Yep. And they also used the Henschel H's 293 glide bomb pretty effectively against Allied ships, both controlled by radio links.
And the U.S.?
The USAAF had them too. Things like the BAT anti-ship glide bomb, so guided weapons were definitely emerging.
Did these groundbreaking weapons actually change the war's outcome, though?
Not as much as you might think. They were innovative, definitely. But the really significant tech, the stuff that could have been game-changing but arrived too late, that was jet power.
Ah, the German jets, the Me-262.
Exactly. The Messerschmitt Me-262 fighter, the Arado R-234 reconnaissance bomber. Truly revolutionary aircraft, way ahead of anything the Allies had in the air.
So why too little too late?
Engine problems, mainly. Developing reliable jet engines took a long, long time, so these planes only really showed up in numbers in 1944, maybe early 45.
By which point?
By which point, the war's industrial and strategic balance was already heavily tilted. Even revolutionary tech like jets couldn't overcome the sheer scale of Allied production and air superiority by then. It's a key lesson, really. Innovation matters, but so does timing and industrial might.
Okay, let's talk strategic bombing. That became such a defining and brutal part of the war in Europe. What were the main Allied goals there? How effective was it?
Well, a major target was Germany's oil supply. Absolutely vital for their U-boats, tanks, planes, everything.
About the fuel.
Right. And they also went after Germany's transportation network, railroads, canals, trying to cripple movement.
Did it work?
It had a huge impact. American B-17s, B-24s, British Lancasters, they, along with sabotage by resistance groups, really hammered the French railway system before and after D-Day.
Ah, so disrupting reinforcements for Normandy.
Severely. It made it incredibly difficult for the Germans to move troops and supplies to counter the invasion. It choked their logistics.
And Japan? Was the strategic bombing campaign there similar or different?
Yeah, very different, actually. A different playbook entirely.
How so?
Well, Japanese cities were largely built of wood and paper, highly flammable. Plus, a lot of their war production, especially smaller components, was dispersed in workshops within residential areas.
So firebombing became the tactic.
Exactly. It became the preferred American strategy. And then General Curtis LeMay made this radical change in tactics in early 45.
What did he do?
He ordered his B-29 super fortresses to basically strip down, remove most of their machine guns to save weight.
Really? Less defense?
Yeah. Fly low, fly at night, and carry way more incendiary bombs.
Why low and at night?
Japan's radar and night fighter defenses were pretty ineffective. LeMay gambled, and it paid off horrifically. It led to these massive firestorms in cities like Tokyo. Millions fled. Industry was devastated. Morale plummeted. It was incredibly destructive.
And in response to that kind of pressure, especially in the Pacific, the Japanese turned to kamikaze attacks.
Mm-hmm.
How should we understand those? Reckless determination is a phrase often used.
I think that captures some of it. They were essentially suicide attacks, single planes or maybe a small group, making these wild approaches, changing course, altitude, using clouds, maybe decoys.
To get through defenses.
To get through the Allied fighter screens and radar, yeah, and then diving straight into ships. The goal was maximum physical damage, obviously, but also maximum psychological impact. Terror.
Did they succeed in that? Did the kamikazes make the Allies rethink things, particularly the invasion of Japan?
Oh, absolutely. They were a major factor in that calculation.
How so?
As the U.S. planned the invasion of the Japanese home islands, Operation Downfall, it was called, they saw the kamikaze attacks intensifying. They realized an invasion would face potentially thousands of these suicide attacks, not just planes, but boats, swimmers. The cost in Allied lives was projected to be astronomical.
So it fed into the decision to use the atomic bombs.
It definitely contributed. That horrifying projection of casualties made finding an alternative, something to force surrender without a ground invasion, seem necessary to decision makers at the time. And it's sobering to realize, intelligence initially underestimated Japan's remaining air strength. By the end, they had something like 12,700 aircraft left in the home islands.
12,000.
Yeah, and maybe half were designated as kamikazes. The potential resistance was just staggering.
Stepping back from the hardware and tactics. The human cost.
Yeah.
Especially on the Eastern Front. It's almost impossible to comprehend the scale.
It truly is. The Eastern Front was by far the largest, bloodiest theater of the war.
The numbers are just
mind-boggling. Over 80% of all WWII combat happened there. Maybe 30 million deaths total on that front alone.
30 million.
Including, estimates suggest, 9 million children. It's almost beyond words.
And ideology was central to that brutality, wasn't it?
Absolutely central. Hitler framed the invasion of the Soviet Union as a war of annihilation. A struggle for existence, he called it, against what the Nazis termed Jewish Bolshevik subhumans and Mongol hordes.
Dehumanizing language.
Completely, and that directly fueled the atrocities. You had the Einsatzgruppen, the mobile killing squads, murdering hundreds of thousands of Jewish civilians, communists, others, right behind the front lines. Over 500,000 Soviet Jews killed in the first 6 months alone.
Just horrific.
And the treatment of Soviet POWs? Germany tried to justify it by saying the USSR hadn't signed the Geneva Convention, but honestly, given the Nazis' overarching genocidal policies, that was largely just an excuse for mass starvation and murder.
Hitler's whole strategy relied on speed, didn't it? Blitzkrieg. What happened when that failed in Russia? And how did it affect his view of, say, Allied air power?
Well, the failure to knock out the Soviets quickly in 1941 forced a massive shift. Germany was suddenly locked into a brutal war of attrition from early 1942 onwards.
A war they weren't really equipped for long term.
Exactly. And compounding that, Hitler just dismissed warnings about a potential Allied air offensive against Germany itself. He didn't believe a second front in the air could really materialize or be effective.
Even though the U.S. was planning.
Yeah, even with things like the U.S. Victory Program, studies outlining plans for massive bombing campaigns, he just wouldn't take the threat seriously enough, which had huge consequences later when the bombs started falling on Germany.
Yet, despite unimaginable losses and destruction, the Soviet Union managed this incredible industrial feat. How did they keep going, even outproducing Germany in some areas?
It was an astonishing achievement. Partly, it was down to Stalin's pre-war 5-year plans. They'd already started industrializing areas deep inside Russia, like the Urals.
So they could move factories.
Exactly. They evacuated something like 1,500 crucial factories and millions of workers eastward, away from the invasion, and got them back into production remarkably quickly.
Incredible logistics.
And you can't discount Lend-Lease either. Allied aid, especially from the U.S., was vital.
What kind of aid?
Huge amounts of stuff. Aviation fuel, raw materials, machine tools, food, and especially trucks. Thousands and thousands of trucks, which freed up Soviet industry to focus on tanks and planes.
Right, so that external help was critical.
It really was. It definitely raises that big question, doesn't it? How much can economic planning and outside support really change the course of a war, even against a seemingly dominant enemy?
And the human cost wasn't just death or injury on the ground.
Yeah.
What about the airmen? especially those in really tough theaters like the Southwest Pacific, the psychological toll.
Oh, the stress was immense. Combat fatigue, what we might call PTSD now, was rampant. Think about U.S. airmen in the Southwest Pacific.
Yeah.
They often weren't rotated home regularly. They were stuck in these monotonous, incredibly hot, disease-ridden environments for ages.
Must have been grueling.
Absolutely. Facing danger on missions, then returning to just awful conditions. Morale suffered badly, performance deteriorated. It was a war against the enemy, but also against the environment and their own mental endurance.
And beyond the combatants, the war hit civilians everywhere so hard. Total war really meant total disruption, didn't it?
Completely.
Yeah.
You saw severe hunger crises across occupied Europe. The Hunger Winter in the Netherlands in 44-45 is a horrifying example.
What happened there?
A German blockade, combined with a really harsh winter and disrupted supply lines partly due to Allied bombing, ironically led to mass starvation. Around 20,000 people died.
Just from hunger.
Yes. And it shows how war, especially air war targeting infrastructure, ripples out to affect everyone, and the long-term impacts. You know, factories can be rebuilt relatively quickly, physical capital bounces back.
But human capital.
Human capital takes much longer to recover. Think about universities in Germany that lost professors purged by the Nazis or killed in the war. Studies show those departments often never fully recovered their previous standing. Deep, lasting scars on society.
It's so bleak, yet paradoxically, sometimes massive disruption like total war can also trigger unexpected social change, right?
It's a fascinating, almost uncomfortable truth. Yes, it can.
Any examples that stand out? Maybe in Britain.
Definitely. In the UK, the shared experience of the Blitz and the war effort created a sense of solidarity and demand for a better future. This directly led to the landslide election victory for Labour in 45.
And the welfare state.
And the creation of the National Health Service, the NHS, in 1948, a direct outcome. Also things like the 1946 New Towns Act, building new communities like Stevenage from scratch. An attempt to rebuild better.
And help for those displaced.
Yes, consider the Polish forces who fought with the Allies but couldn't go home to a Soviet-dominated Poland. The UK's 1947 Polish Resettlement Act offered them a place, employment, residence rights. A sense of responsibility emerged from this shared struggle.
So if we try to tie this all together, connecting it back to the bigger picture, the ideologies driving the war, especially Nazism, had this devastating effect on just basic human dignity.
Utterly devastating.
What are the enduring lessons there? How these ideas shaped the conflict and its worst horrors?
Well, Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, it wasn't subtle. It laid out this racist worldview, this need for a Lebensraum living space for the German master race.
Yes.
Which meant the extermination, expulsion, or enslavement of entire peoples deemed inferior, Jews, Romani, Slavs, millions of people.
Targeted not for actions, but for identity.
Exactly. That's the core of it. The Holocaust, the mass atrocities on the Eastern Front, people were murdered simply because of who they were perceived to be. It wasn't about what they did.
A terrifying reminder.
It's a stark, enduring reminder of where ideologies that deny individual worth, that systematically dehumanize and target entire groups can lead. Thinkers like Hannah Arendt looking at totalitarianism, or Avishai Margalit on the decent society. They grapple with this, how fragile our shared humanity can be when faced with ideologies of hate and exclusion.
So wrapping this up, what does it all mean? It seems clear air power didn't just participate in World War II, it fundamentally reshaped it. It went from maybe a supporting actor to a lead role, a decisive strategic force.
Couldn't agree more.
But looking deeper, beyond the planes and the bombs, what this dive really shows is how tangled up military strategy was with these powerful political ideologies. And just the immense, profound human cost of total war.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a fight in the skies, was it? It was a reflection of humanity pushed to extremes, incredibly destructive, yet sometimes somehow resilient.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought for you, for everyone listening. Consider how the lessons learned, or perhaps sometimes not learned, from WWII air campaigns still echo today.
How so?
Think about the debates around bombing civilian areas, the impact on societies, on the human spirit. These questions haven't gone away.
Still relevant.
Very much so. And also reflect on that resilience we mentioned, populations under unimaginable pressure. What does that tell us about the importance of protecting basic human values, even, maybe especially, in times of conflict? What does it suggest about the future of war and the human element that, despite all the technology, remains right at the center of it?